buffeted from every sensory direction by the absolute conviction that there does exist a basic inner code of self-regulation, what we might call the lowest common denominator that governs all who consider themselves members of the human family. It is unavoidable that I devote the rest of this contribution to a series of apologies. The first goes to the convener of this very event, the widow, Madame Fati Adeyu. That apology, and to the widows as well, and to the entire family. And that apology is deserved by my momentary decision, not even once, but twice, to cancel my appearance here today, despite a firm commitment. The explanation for such a negative impulse has to do with my oft-stated view that certain kinds of assault on human sensibility in this nation should attract nothing less than a total shutdown in whatever affected state until that untoward event is resolved. That consideration has a long history. It became galvanized, not surprisingly, by an unprecedented human desecration, an event that inserted the word Chibok into global awareness in the tragic mode, to be followed by Dapchi, then evolved into the haphazard venture with schools as primary targets. It did not end there, as that new culture in child degradation, commonly referred to as kidnapping, became rampant. I seized whatever opportunity I had to reiterate that position, namely, that whenever any member of our community goes missing, only to resurface as the voice of an invisible surrogate negotiating his or her sale like any other market commodity, such a state should simply shut down totally, leaving only security agencies at large to restore to us our collective dignity. My spate of apologies, as you must have anticipated by now, extends further back in time. They instigate memory all the way back to my response to the family, clan, village, and state of that innocent man, Akaluka, whose severed head was stuck on a pole, behind which his murderers sang, danced, jubilated, and extolled the might and peace of Allah, against whom it was alleged the victim had committed the unpardonable crime of blasphemy. Akaluka was hunted down, dragged out of a police station where he had taken refuge, dehumanized and butchered. Now, does that scenario ring painfully familiar and immediate? My apologies leap over numerous unremarked, unrecorded mimics, simply reduced to statistics in the nation's subconscious, to plead for acceptance by the family also of Madame Oluwatosin, a school teacher posted to Bauchi in a routine educational process as the invigilator. She was similarly hunted down like wild prairie, stripped naked, dragged to her messy death. It culminated in a funeral pyre of motor tires. She was accused, like Akaluka, of having disrespected a factory-lined copy of a book known as the Holy Quran. Again, is that real from history? Spin once again on familiar groups? And just to add piquancy to this feast of the macabre, the torturers, the killers in that preceding instance were also school pupils and of a model secondary institution. She was also dragged out from sanctuary, the headmaster's home or office, which she had fled for protection. For those who dispute that history, this reason that history merely repeats itself, the young Deborah is merely the tragic disputant. Tawdry, dismal, inglorious history. Never mind the sight of jubilating mobs fouling the air with chants of victory and parading the spoils of war. But why do I burden myself with this Jeremiah of apologies? Simply for the reason I've just stated. It would have been, at its most profound, a dereliction of duty. And our event today is to commemorate that communal imperative that sustains faith in our collective being. No one will deny we all owe a duty to the living. But some incline to the stance that such duty terminates only with the living. Well, in my school of reflection and the testimony of history, that duty extends to death and beyond. That claim is grounded not in mere sentiment, not in attachment to morbidity or unassuaged grief, but in banal self-interest. For instance, if having failed to save Akaluka, having failed to rescue Uluwatosin, setting aside the hundreds, probably thousands of other victims, if we had openly, justly, and rigorously ensured justice in the crime that terminated their existences, we would not now be apologizing to the latest victim of such religion-inspired barbarity. I refer, of course, to Ms. Deborah Samuel. Of course, we're not all to be found within the same terrain of sensibilities. Absolutely not. And that has been demonstrated most vividly by the very nature of responses that have been exacted after the nation's recent exercise in human sacrifice. The nation's president, traditional rulers, among them the Sultan of Sokoto, who also serves as the Emir of Nigerian Muslims, women organizations, workers, unions, and professionals from all walks of life, young and old, have raised their voices in accents of apology and condemnation. However, a glorified cleric, no less than the Grand Vizier of the iconic Mosque of this nation's capital, Abuja, has inserted a dissenting voice. The young woman, Deborah, he declared, deserved her death. This mullah, allegedly a man of learning, since his name is professionally captioned with a professorship, said that there is a line, a red line, that none of us must cross, no matter who we are, what we think, professor value. Like the late Ayatollah Khomeini of Iran, this mere mortal has declared himself the supreme being with the power of life and death over all the denizens of the world. His call is unambiguous. Professor Ibrahim Bakari has placed his myrmidons of faith on the alert, trying to emulate the example of these death-dealing mutants of fanatic indoctrination. Permit me to digress. This digression is one, however, that is pertinent to this occasion. I must take you back to December 2015. On that day, and not for the first time in the career of a certain religious sect, hundreds of lives were mown down in broad daylight, and within minutes in the state of Kaduna. The presumed leaders of the alleged provocation were locked up, charged with every kind of criminal conduct, and are still battling, even till today, for their full liberation. Now, what exactly was their crime? They also had drawn a line. That line, they declared, should not be crossed by any. Well, it seemed that they had made their match. The army also had a line, but the shared leaders apparently did not know where it was drawn. For that, they paid a deadly forfeit of numerous lives. So there we are. Solitary lines crisscrossing, drawn by individuals and constituency constituencies of beliefs and non-beliefs, of power and aspiration of power. Nowhere do the belligerents profess the common constitutional line and the boundaries of legitimate conduct that supposedly define the imperatives of cohabitation and respect for human commonality known as life. In the ongoing war in the Ukraine, it has been demonstrated that an ancient line remains forever with us, and that those who deliberately kill defenseless civilians are regarded as criminals, war criminals, to be placed on trial at the first opportunity. A Russian soldier at this very moment is undergoing that line of instruction. He has not only pleaded guilty, but actually confronted the widow with the words, "I am sorry." Professor Imam Ibrahim Makari, however, insists with a handful of others, including a vocal serving policeman quite recently, that there is no remorse involved in the torture and lynching of a young student on this earth, which we all share. To anyone who cares to listen, Makari has implicitly directed his followers to take the law into their own hands in the name of religion and in a nation beset on all sides by wars of altered nationalism and religious fanaticism. That is the message of a supposedly holy man to youths, to us, his message to a nation embroiled in a madness of multiple insurgencies.